If you thought last week's drama was heavy, you have absolutely no idea what's waiting for you in today's episode, because Lazarus has just crossed a line that even his own family didn't think he was capable of crossing, and by the end of this video you will understand exactly why fans are calling this the most explosive episode of the month. Stay with me till the end because there are at least 3 twists here that are going to change the direction of this entire storyline, and if you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a recap. We open on a tense scene at the Zondo household, where Lazarus is pacing back and forth, clearly rattled by something he overheard the night before. He has convinced himself that there is a mole feeding information to their rivals, and instead of looking closer to home, he has decided that the easiest person to blame is Mawethu. It's a move that feels cowardly even by Lazarus's low standards, and the way he tries to rope other family members into his scheme shows just how desperate he has become. He approaches one relative and tries to get them to go along with the plan to throw Mawethu under the bus, suggesting they simply let him be suspected so that the real culprit can stay hidden. But to his surprise, he doesn't get the easy agreement he was hoping for. He's reminded, quite firmly, that Mawethu has never given anyone a reason to distrust him, and that pinning blame on an innocent man just to protect the guilty party is not something the family should be doing, no matter how convenient it might seem in the moment. What makes this whole subplot so interesting is the quiet friendship that has been building between Wandel and Uma, which suddenly becomes relevant here. Because of that bond, there's pressure building for someone to either produce real evidence proving who the mole actually is, or accept that Lazarus will let all the blame land squarely on one person's shoulders. Selfish barely covers what Lazarus is doing at this point, because rather than take responsibility for his own part in the mess, he seems perfectly content to let an innocent man carry the weight of his mistakes. It's a storyline that's clearly being set up to boil over in the coming weeks, and if the writers follow through the way we think they will, we could be looking at a full-blown family fallout before the month is over. Meanwhile, over on the younger side of the cast, things are just as messy, if not messier. Zethu's girlfriend finds herself caught in an uncomfortable position, stuck between loyalty to Zethu and the reality of what's happening around her. There's noticeable friction between Axolani and Zethu, and it's clear the chemistry that once made their scenes so easy to watch has completely soured. The two of them can barely be in the same room without the tension spilling over, and it's obvious that something happened between them that neither side is ready to admit to the rest of the family. Older relatives are watching this play out and, understandably, some of them are not thrilled about how the young people are handling things. There's a real generational divide showing here, with the parents wanting more respect and transparency, and the youth pushing back, insisting that the older generation just needs to accept that times have changed and young people are going to make their own decisions whether the elders approve or not. Now let's talk about one of the sweeter storylines this week, because not everything on Inimba is doom and gloom. Zenan finally takes the step that the whole family has been waiting for, going through his initiation and officially becoming a man in the eyes of Xhosa tradition. What makes this particularly touching is the conversation around timing, because there's an acknowledgement that it is never too late for anything in life, and Zenan going back to initiation school in his 30s is treated not as something to be embarrassed about, but as something worth celebrating. It's a nice reminder from the show that personal growth doesn't come with an expiry date, and honestly, this might be one of the most grounded, emotionally satisfying beats in the whole episode. There's a real sense of pride radiating from the family as they prepare for his celebration, and it's clear the writers wanted this moment to feel like a genuine cultural milestone rather than just another plot device. The celebration itself turns into one of the bigger set pieces of the episode, with practically everyone in the extended family showing up for what becomes a full-blown homecoming party. It's a beautiful scene on paper, but underneath the joy there's an undercurrent of sadness that the show handles with surprising delicacy. Thandika, in particular, has a moment that hits hard, because in the middle of the festivities she starts taking pictures and talking to a photo of Nkamva as though he were actually there, imagining him collecting his own certificate, celebrating alongside everyone else. It's a gutting scene, and Ulothi, watching from a distance, clearly feels for her, quietly worried that grief like this could be tied to something deeper than ordinary sadness. When she's gently asked whether she's really okay to attend, Thandika insists there's no problem at all with her being there to support her son's graduation, but the way she keeps drifting back to memories of Nkamba throughout the celebration tells a different story. It's the kind of understated, layered performance that reminds you why this cast has such a loyal following, and it sets up what feels like a slow-burn storyline about grief that the show is clearly not done with yet. There's more tension brewing when it comes to whether certain relatives should even attend the party at all, with some pushback around consent and comfort levels that never quite gets resolved on screen. It's frustrating in the way good soap opera writing is supposed to be frustrating, leaving you wanting answers that the show simply isn't ready to give yet. One thing is clear though, whatever is going on with the older generation right now, they need to sit down and actually talk to each other, because the constant tiptoeing around real feelings is only building toward a bigger blow-up later. Shifting gears, we go back to the Zolani and Zethu situation, and this is where things get loud. There's a scene of raw, unfiltered shouting, with someone being told in no uncertain terms to get out of the house, and it's honestly one of those moments where you can feel the temperature of the whole episode spike. Whatever secret was being hidden clearly isn't a secret anymore, and the fallout from that reveal is going to ripple through the rest of the season if the previews are anything to go by. Then we turn to Lwandle, who has his own complicated web to untangle this week. He approaches Kusila, and there's a whole conversation involving Zondo and questions around loyalty, respect, and what exactly Zondo said or didn't say about him. It's genuinely a little confusing on first watch, with a lot of back and forth about whether Zondo feels disrespected, whether there's something happening involving prison time, and whether Lwandle should actually be grateful for how things have played out for him so far. What we can say for certain is that Lwandle is dealing with fallout from his girlfriend's connections, specifically around business dealings tied to selling something through Zolika, who, notably, does not seem thrilled about the idea of going back to work in that particular arrangement. Meanwhile, Lazarus seems to be finding a strange sense of satisfaction watching Zondo squirm, which only reinforces just how manipulative his character has become this season. There's also a lighter thread running alongside all this chaos, with talk of Zolika's wedding dinner being planned for Friday, and a cute exchange acknowledging that Mawethu is still studying, which grounds the episode a little and reminds us that not every character is caught up in betrayal and heartbreak. It's a small beat, but it's the kind of detail that makes this show feel lived in, like life is still happening in the background even while the bigger dramatic storylines dominate the runtime. And speaking of big reveals, we cannot skip over Zolani's announcement, because this is the moment a lot of viewers have been waiting for. He confirms, publicly, that he and Zethu are now official, and while there's clearly support from some corners of the family, it does not sit well with Yulamais at all. In fact, Yulamais takes it upon himself to push Thulani into confronting his brother, framing it almost as a test of manhood, insisting that if Thulani is really the man of the house he claims to be, he needs to go and put an end to what he calls nonsense. Thulani, to his credit, doesn't seem entirely convinced by this framing, and there's a noticeable discomfort in how he handles the conversation, which raises an interesting question the show seems to be building toward. Is Thulani actually capable of making decisions for himself, or is he constantly being steered by the opinions of the people around him, particularly his wife? It's a fair question, and one that long-time viewers have probably been asking for a while now. There's also a quieter but meaningful beat about Zolani stepping up to help raise Nkamva's child, which is a genuinely sweet gesture on paper, though it's clearly going to stir up complicated feelings once Thandika finds out, given everything we already know about her grief and her attachment to her son's memory. The show seems to be setting up a collision course here between two very different kinds of love and loyalty, and it's going to be fascinating to see how that plays out once everyone is in the same room again. On a cultural note, this episode leans hard into traditional customs, and honestly, it's one of the more visually rich installments we've seen in a while. There's real attention paid to the clothing choices tied to Xhosa customs, with discussion around what's appropriate to wear for the celebration and how different this occasion is compared to others the family has hosted. Even with all the outfit prep and excitement building around the gathering, there's a lingering sense that not everyone is going to walk away from this celebration feeling good about how things turned out, and that tension between celebration and unresolved family conflict is really what makes this episode land as hard as it does. By the time the credits roll, you're left with a dozen unanswered questions. Will Mawethu ever find out that Lazarus tried to pin the blame on him? Will Thandika's grief around Kamva finally get the attention it deserves from the people around her? What exactly is going on between Wandel, Zondo, and Kusila, and how deep does that business trouble actually run? And of course, how is Thulani going to handle being pushed by Ulamais to confront his own brother over a relationship that, frankly, isn't anyone else's business to police? All of these threads are left dangling in exactly the way that keeps you coming back week after week, and honestly, that's the mark of a soap opera doing its job well. That's everything for today's Inimba review. As always, this is simply commentary and recap content based on the broadcast episode, meant to spark discussion among fans, not a substitute for watching the show itself. Let me know down in the comments which storyline you're most invested in right now, whether it's the Lazarus and Mawethu situation, the Zolani and Zethu relationship finally going public, or the emotional weight of Thandika's grief coming through during the celebration scenes. Drop your predictions below for what you think happens next. Give this video a like if you enjoyed the breakdown, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you right back here for the next Inimba recap.